Welcome back to Lit Sports Online. This is Split Decision. We're here with the UFC 247 Jones versus Reyes preview, where we see a less than stellar card.
We're still going to cover it.
We're gonna cover the three fights that I care the most about, and we're probably gonna talk about Jon Jones for a while. Yeah. As is the tendency with any big name fighter, you know, we talk for 12 minutes about Conor McGregor in a 17-minute video, so might as well start the main card off. Cover Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast, versus Ilir Latifi.
Yeah, and Latifi makes his debut to heavyweight after a time as a short and stocky light heavyweight.
Yeah, he's kind of he's built kind of like a fire hydrant, you know.
Just like
he's like I don't know 5'8".
Jeez,
but he's just like
you
jacked.
He reminds me of this D lineman we had that play. Was like dude was just stocky as shit. Like
yeah, he looks like a fullback. It's pretty crazy, and. You know, so he was never the biggest light heavyweight, and that was part of the problem that we saw with him. Was his striking game never quite got up to the rest of the light heavyweights, and he was never really able to be super effective. With any of his striking. You know, he did land some big punches. You know, with those shorter guys, they can get so much torque. You know, on their swing because they're so compact. You know, their rotation speed can be so fast that he did get some knockouts. You know, but his bread and butter is his takedown game and his ground and pound, and he's a great wrestler, which is rare to see out of a European fighter. But he's going up to heavyweight, and his debut is against a former title challenger in Derrick Lewis. Yeah. And we've seen him fight Cormier, Francis Ngannou, you know, Curtis Blades, everybody at the top of the division. Maybe not Curtis Blades. Doesn't matter. But he's a former title challenger and a kind of a perennial like top 5, top 6 fighter for the past, you know, couple of years, and it's a tall order for Latifi, no pun intended, for the short man. But he's going up against a legit heavyweight. You know, Latifi could make light heavyweight. He's
not. You gotta have reach at light heavyweight, and I think that's his biggest flaw. You know, just being so stocky, and it's a shame. But I mean. Is it going to be any better in heavyweight, though?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. They're massive.
So there's a couple things to consider, right? First, a lot of his game is predicated on getting that takedown, right? It's not going to be so easy for him to get the takedown if he can't get anywhere near guys.
Exactly.
And the way that he strikes is kind of like big power pot shots, right? But he's going up against Derrick Lewis, and that's what Derrick Lewis's specialty is. That dude punches so hard, it's crazy.
And a way further reach.
Exactly. He's a much bigger dude. He's a natural heavyweight. Derrick Lewis is not making the 205-pound weight limit, whereas Latifi can. And so I think this is, you know, I think it's Latifi trying to refresh himself, thinking, you know, maybe he can't implement his game plan as well. Maybe he doesn't have as much cardio. Maybe he doesn't have as good a movement because he's draining himself with the weight cut and all these things. You know, going up in weight can work for people. You know, we've seen it with McGregor, Cerrone, Rafael dos Anjos, Anthony Pettis, you know, tons of people, Robert Whittaker, all these guys. But I think that the size difference between Latifi and the actual natural heavyweights is too gigantic. You know, he had a hard time reaching light heavyweights. So going up to the heavyweight division where you're going to be facing monsters
like little titans,
like Derrick Lewis or Curtis Blades or Junior Dos Santos or Stefan Struve, for Christ's sake, man. That dude's leg is taller than Ilir Latifi. Like it's a weird.
It's almost unfair in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he does.
I am. I'm excited to watch it, but I predict this probably going real early. I think a knockout early, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too.
If you're not gonna reach him, if you're not gonna be able to get in there. Dude, he's gonna just knock you out like real quick.
I think that if maybe he was draining himself a ton to get to light heavyweight, and he comes out at heavyweight and just has so much energy, he looks like a buzzsaw. But I don't
That
think
might
so.
be
You know, barring that, I don't see him beating Derrick Lewis. I don't see him getting inside Derrick Lewis's reach without eating a giant shot. I think that
your jaw's going to hurt trying to go for that shot.
I think he's not going to be able to reach Derrick Lewis, but also I think that the power that Derrick Lewis hits with compared to the power that Latifi is used to facing is going to be a pretty big discrepancy there.
Yeah.
So I think that Latifi's going to probably end up taking a bigger shot than he's used to and end up on the wrong side of that consciousness barrier.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I don't see this ending well for him, but you never know. You never know what could happen, but...
Yeah. No, honestly, I'm surprised that Lewis is taking this fight. You know, Lewis is a guy who's towards the top of the division, so it's kind of a weird fight for him. But Latifi's a relatively big name, you know, so it's kind of like a tune-up fight, like just getting him back on gear. He wins this fight, then he'll fight a real heavyweight and try to work his way back to the top of the division.
Yeah. But next up, we have the Women's Flyweight Championship, Valentina Shevchenko versus Katlyn Chookagian. I probably messed that up.
Yeah, no, you're close. Chookagian.
Nice.
Chookagian. Chookagian.
So it's a classic striking matchup in power versus volume. Shevchenko, a 17-time Muay Thai and kickboxing champ. I mean, 17 times.
Dude, Shevchenko
She's a badass.
Dude, Shevchenko is one of the best fighters in the UFC. I mean, you could talk about... A lot of people like have to qualify that like she's probably the best women's fighter. Fuck that.
Might be the best fighter
she's
all around.
One of the best fighters in the UFC, man, and she's one of the most credentialed fighters in the UFC. You know, it's rare that you find somebody who is such a stellar and accomplished champion in a different sport in the combat sports world that transitions over to be so good in the UFC. You rarely see it. You occasionally see it in people like Henry Cejudo, a gold medalist. Comes over to the UFC, does great. Holly Holm, like 15-time boxing champion, then came over to the UFC, won the title by beating Ronda Rousey, you know, and, you know, going back, she fought Shevchenko. So it just goes to show you how good Shevchenko is at striking. You know, she is a dominant world champion in just the sport of striking. Comes over to the UFC and has had phenomenal success. I think the only person she's lost to in the UFC is the current women's bantamweight and featherweight champion, Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
So when Shevchenko came into the UFC, they didn't have her preferred division of flyweight at 125. She was fighting at bantamweight at 135.
Oh, wow.
Where she's a little bit undersized, you know. So she went up and was facing bigger women, and still she only lost to Amanda Nunes, right? Who would go on to win the title, and then not only would go on to win the title, but would then go up a weight class and beat Cyborg, and become, you know, what most people consider the best female fighter of all time, or the GOAT, if you will, right? But Shevchenko is just super well-rounded, but her striking game is what stands out the most. She's phenomenal in her striking game. She has a huge bag of tricks. It's all power shots. She's just phenomenal at every point you can want.
Yeah, I mean, and on the other side, you have Chookagian, who's a busy movement fighter with dynamic striking. She trains out of Longo Weidman MMA and trains under John Danaher. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's... So, like, Longo Weidman MMA is the same camp that, like... Obviously, Chris Weidman came from there. You know, Matt Serra came from there. You know,
she's trained with greats.
Al Iaquinta comes from there. Aljamain Sterling is out of that camp. Like, they have a ton. They have multiple champions over their history and a ton of top-tier fighters right now. Not to mention that Chookagian goes and trains at the Renzo Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Manhattan, training under John Danaher, who is one of the best minds in combat sports, particularly in jiu-jitsu. John Danaher has what he calls the Danaher Death Squad, and it's basically just a team of guys that have been running like roughshod all over the jiu-jitsu competition community. It's insane. Like the guys that have come out from under John Danaher are insane. You know, Gary Tonin and not Jeff Gordon. Gordon Ryan and all these guys, and they're just Danaher is a grappling and combat sports genius, and having him in your corner is a huge plus for anybody.
Oh yeah.
Like I quite frequently mention different camps when I'm talking about the top tier fighters, and it's because you consistently see really amazing athletes coming out of these camps, and it's specific coaches or specific head coaches or whatever. You know, you have your TriStar gym with Faraz Zahabi, who produced George St. Pierre. You have Greg Jackson, Jon Jones, Carlos Condit, Holly Holm. The list goes on. You know, you have AKA, which produced under Javier Mendez, which produced Cain Velasquez, Daniel Cormier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Luke Rockhold. You have your Duke Rufus, and John Danaher is another one of those names that you don't hear very often because he is not focused on MMA like all these other coaches are. He's focused on grappling. But when you have these fighters that come in under John Danaher, under the Renzo Gracie belt umbrella, and under the Sarah Longo umbrella, it's a special place, you know. And those coaches are amazing. And so you cannot count Katlyn Chookagian out, even though she's going against, you know, one of the best fighters that MMA, let alone, you know,
it could be
women's
upset
MMA.
Season.
Right, and so it's an interesting matchup in the sense that they have very, very different striking styles. They're both very busy. They both like to fight long. They both, you know, like to counter-strike, although Shevchenko is more of a counter-striker. Chookagian is a little busier, likes to keep the range more than Shevchenko does. Shevchenko lets people come to her and then stops them at the range she wants them, whereas Chookagian likes to keep peppering people and keep them out at the end of her punches so that she knows where they're at all times, as opposed to them coming in and walking into her punches like Shevchenko likes. But it's... I think what we're going to see, I think, is Chookagian trying to have a long-range fight, very busy, trying to keep Shevchenko at the end of her punches. Shevchenko probably throwing a lot of kicks and stuff to close the distance or to throw Chookagian's advances off. So if Chookagian tries to come forward, I think we'll see Shevchenko immediately counter, try to catch Chookagian off guard so that she stumbles into the next shot or two that she was already planning on throwing. Once you have that forward momentum, it's kind of hard to stop it, right? So if Chookagian's coming in for a combination and Shevchenko's able to throw her off on that first step and a half, she might walk into something, right?
That's true.
But if Chookagian's able to get it to the ground, while Shevchenko has submission finishes and a phenomenal grappling game, we haven't seen that much of Chookagian's grappling game in the UFC. And like I said, she comes out of one of the best grappling camps, if not the best grappling camp in the world. So I think that if it goes to the ground, it could be a very, very interesting fight. I think it's a question of who's able to implement their game plan on the feet and which fighter decides to take it to the ground, if it goes there, and how it gets there. You know, if it's a desperation shot, not good.
Yeah.
But if Chookagian is able to throw Shevchenko off her game a little bit and then get a takedown and go for a submission, I think it could be an interesting night for her.
Yeah, like I said, I smell an upset. I'm just saying, if it goes to... It can go either way, and that's what makes it so interesting. One of the three fights we're talking about it, because there's no freaking telling where it's going to go. You know what? I'd take Chookagian. I'm gonna go out on him and see what happens.
She's a pretty... Just, if you want to throw some money on, she's like a 14-1 underdog. So
really?
Throw $100 on her, you come back 1,400. Never look smarter.
Don't tempt me, actually. Shit.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, it might be worth it. Just saying, for all you gamblers watching. There you go, pro tip. Now, next up...
I wouldn't do it, though.
Yes. If you got $100 to spare, by all means, send it our way. You know? But next up, we have the light heavyweight championship. Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes. And we know Jon Jones is the GOAT. I mean, what else is there to be said about him? But Dominic Reyes, I personally don't know too much about him. So, Pat, tell me, who is homeboy?
Where should we start? He's a standout athlete from his hometown in high school, went to college, was a team captain on the football team in his junior year, captain for 2 years. Almost made it to the NFL, but just didn't quite make the cut.
Purebred athlete, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, one of those dudes who's just a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal all-around athlete. He played multiple sports in high school. His brother was like the wrestling champion for their state, I think. Wow. And so while he focused on football and his brother focused on wrestling, they would still wrestle, and he would go to wrestling practices and all this stuff. So Reyes kind of grew up wrestling at a decently high level, doesn't have a collegiate wrestling career, which, obviously Jon Jones is a G.O.A.T champion. Yep. But Reyes is about as good an athlete as you're going to see in the UFC. He was, that close to making it to the NFL.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, that's a level of athlete that you don't, at this point in time, we're not seeing in the UFC quite as frequently. I think it's going to be much more frequent moving forward. Now that you can actually make decent money being an MMA fighter, I think we're going to see a lot higher level of athlete coming in than we have previously. And Dominic Reyes is kind of like one of the early people that we're seeing from that realm. Brendan Schaub was kind of the first guy that I can think of that tried out for the NFL, didn't quite make it, was a stellar college athlete, and then transitioned to MMA and was a top 10 heavyweight for a couple of years. And now we're seeing guys like Dominic Reyes doing the same thing. They don't quite make it to the NFL, come over. Greg Hardy, was in the NFL. But Reyes is a good kind of standout among those people at this point. Yeah. He's undefeated at this point. Wow. And most of his finishes have come by, or most of his wins have come by finish. This dude has power in his hands. He has good footwork, good movement, decent wrestling. He gets up real quick. When he does get taken down, which isn't very frequent, he pops right back up. He has a well-rounded skill set. He has a big shot in his hands. And he has one particular tool that I really like, where he has a straight left hand that he throws. He likes to back up, and as he's moving away from a guy, he kind of cuts a corner out to his left. Then he plants his back foot and throws that left hand straight down the pipe. And he's got multiple finishes with this punch. It's a brilliant punch, and the timing that he throws it with is really, really beautiful. And I think, if that punch lands on anybody, they're done. The chances of it landing on Jon Jones are less likely than other guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Jon Jones, he's easily the most dominant fighter in history. When you think of UFC and MMA, you think Jones.
Yeah.
And his only loss was via DQ, and that was on some bullshit illegal elbow call. Like, really?
Yeah, he was smashing Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, he was dominating Mark Hamill. He got DQ, and rightfully so. He broke whatever.
Yeah,
but
he broke the rules,
essentially, he's undefeated, right?
Yeah.
So
now Reyes is a true, undefeated,
and I think that could play a part in this fight.
That's going to be interesting. But
when a guy is undefeated, there's that confidence.
Yeah.
There's that air of invincibility about you. When you haven't lost, it doesn't really seem plausible that you will lose. You know what I mean? So one of the things I'm thinking is that he's going up against Jon Jones, man. They look like the scariest dude in MMA. Not only is Jon Jones the most dominant fighter in MMA history, save maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov. Close, doesn't matter. But he's ruthless, dude. He's mean, man. Those elbows he throws are crazy, dude. He put Lyoto Machida to sleep and dropped him on his face. He's done some ridiculously mean shit inside that cage. And, I don't know if Reyes, his confidence and stuff might be enough to overcome that, but we'll see.
But could his confidence be enough to maybe I'm the shit like Jon Jones? Of course, yes, he has respect for him to a degree, but when you walk into the octagon and you have all the confidence in the freaking world, could he let his guard down a little?
He could, but what I'm thinking is it might be good in the sense that, what most fighters think is Jon Jones takes the time to study his opponents, and he likes to pick people apart. He likes to kind of, like the Anderson Silva approach, where the first round's kind of slow, and he kind of figures out what you're going to do. He sets traps to see your reactions and all this stuff. Jon Jones' fight IQ is insane. You watch the UFC Inside the Octagon with Dan Hardy and watch his breakdown of Jon Jones. It's fascinating, man. Jon Jones sets crazy kickboxing traps and all sorts of shit. But I think that Reyes' confidence and belief in himself, and just the fact that he's undefeated, he has no reason to question whether or not he can do something. He honestly believes that he is going to beat Jon Jones. Like there's no if about it. It's a when for him. And I think that could be a decent factor in the fight, you know. And a lot of guys go in there and they go, well, I'm just going to take the fight to Jon Jones. That's the way to beat him. That's the way to do it. But there are also guys who have losses, and then when they actually get in there, they're not actually able to get started because Jon Jones fights at range so good. He doesn't. He just peppers people. He taps your shin, and then he taps your calf, and then he pokes your knee, and then he slaps you in the face. Like he just keeps his reach is so crazy. Yeah. He has a 7.5-inch reach advantage on Reyes, which is crazy considering they're the same height. Like they're both 6'4".
How long?
They're both 6'4", but he has a 7.5-inch reach advantage, which is not good for Reyes. And you know, in Jones' last fight, we saw some success with Thiago Santos throwing big shots and round shots and a lot of leg kicks and stuff. And Reyes could duplicate some of that success, but Jon Jones is one of those fighters who's so smart that he's not going to fall for those same tricks. Yeah. Especially not the next fight. That's relatively fresh in his mind, you know. So I'm wondering,
looking for that, you know.
I'm wondering if that confidence that Reyes carries with him, if he comes in there and kind of storms Jon Jones, you know, like a lot of people say they're going to do and don't. Everyone says they're going to bring the fight to him, and most don't.
You're not.
But with Dominic Reyes, who's a dude who is just as big as Jon Jones, he's 28, 29 years old, graduated in 2008 from high school the same year as me, which is insane.
That's wild. What am I doing?
Dude is... I'm thinking that, you know, he might just go in there and actually take it to Jon in the first couple minutes of the fight. And if he does that and catches Jon off guards, if Jon's not expecting such a fast start and just catches Jon or is able to counter something, then with the power that Reyes has and he has good footwork and good head movement, it's as possible for Reyes to catch Jon Jones with a big punch as it's ever been for anybody, if not more likely. He's a little trickier. He's more athletic. He's just as big, just as strong as Jon Jones. He has these nice slips and that really nice counter left hand. If anybody can catch Jon Jones with that punch, it's Dominic Reyes. That being said, that's the only way he wins.
Yeah.
He's either catching Jon Jones with a huge shot real early, or Jon Jones is taking him seriously as a contender and is going to go in there and just do Jon Jones. And Jon Jones is the best fighter of all time. He's going to... if he's taking you seriously and he trains and he puts in the time and the effort, he's going to figure you out. He's going to have you figured out before you get in there. He has the best coaching staff in the world, the best team in the world. He's the best fighter in the world. He has everything.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and we've been talking gambling and picking our picks. I mean, I'm not picking against Jones, not in the least bit. I mean, it could go either way, but
might be worth a $10 bet, 20 tops. I just don't want to end up in the Holly Holm Ronda Rousey thing where right before the fight starts, I look at my friend and say she's going to kick her in the face, and then it happens 4 minutes later, and then I don't win all the money I should have.
That's a sad day. Yeah. Don't make that same mistake.
It's a really good matchup. Dominic Reyes.
It's gonna be a great fight.
Yeah, like I said, dude, there's a couple things that are really interesting about this fight. Dominic Reyes undefeated, his confidence, his athleticism, his reach. He's the same size as Jones, which we haven't seen for a while, and his power. But they're not. None of those are things that Jon Jones has not seen before in another fighter. He's never quite seen them in this package, where they're all kind of together in one fighter that has decent footwork, good head movement, good power, big guy, strong, reach, all that. But he's seen all those individual tools before and in different variations, so I can't imagine we're going to see Jon Jones lose, but it's still an interesting fight nonetheless.
Such an interesting fight, and I mean, I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to tune in for it. I know you are. Me too. Like I said, it's going to be a great fight. I think those three fights that's going to make the card, honestly. Screw the rest of them. Yeah. The three fights we talked about.
There's some other fights that I think will be fun, but they're not big names that are interesting.
We may cover
only interesting to guys like me, not to
casual fans.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, a pretty heavy end stack card, but yeah, that does it for our episode. Thank you for tuning in to Lit Sports Online Split Decision. Whether you're listening to it on the podcast or watching on LitTube, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Take care.
We are here with the UFC something or split this or...
Split the server.
Motherfuckers don't even know they own the show. Motherfuckers don't.
I just forgot to say the show before I went in.